Hi guys, welcome to Dead End Street. We're going to take a look at the top 25 albums of 1979. Pretty stacked year. Had to leave off some pretty classic stuff. It's pretty tough to do. I mean, some Blondie records and um, Graham Parker, The Fall. It's only 25, and there's a real lot of really good records this year. So let's take a look and get started. So at number 25, um, I put in Dream Police by Cheap Trick. Um, so I mean, you get the Masters of Power Pop. They record one of their best collections of songs. It's accessible, just weird enough. I know they're kind of viewed as kind of like a mainstream kind of act, but I think they've got some really weird, jagged edges, makes them quirkier than a lot of their other peers around at the time. Number 24 is Look Sharp by Joe Jackson. And that was Joe Jackson's debut album. Um, it's got some really great hooks on there. Um, it's really um, unique for its time and different. And I know it kind of gets thrown in with that pub rock thing with, Elvis Costello and Graham Parker and stuff, but it's really different than that. It has a little bit more of like a jazzy feel to it in some spots, and um, but it also rocks in some spots too. Well, very good album. It's produced really well, and it still sounds fresh today. It doesn't sound outdated at all. Number 23 is Wave by the Patti Smith Group. Now, this is a record that I know is kind of viewed as her radio friendly album, um, coming off the heels of the success of Easter. But I think that this album has some pretty daring moments on it, some pretty adventurous stuff. Um, yeah, it's a little bit more um, easier to digest for like your run of the mill mainstream music fan. But I mean, how many horses or Radio Ethiopias can you record? So I think it was a very good album. Number 22 is Drums and Wires by XTC. Um, they greatly refined their sound after this going forward, but I quite like the quirkiness and the jitteriness of this one. Um, it's probably their most angular record. I think the songs on there are, you know, pointier riffs and stuff like that to them. And but I think this was their springboard to some really excellent stuff moving forward. Number 21 is the debut record, self-titled record by Raincoats. Um, I don't. It's hard for me to gauge. I don't know how well known they are, um, but it's hard to describe them without hearing them. No one sounds like Raincoats with the crazy violin playing and then it sounds like chaos in spots, but it works. And the songs are very memorable and they will get stuck in your head. But the first time you hear them, you're listening, you're going, "What the hell am I hearing?" But it's definitely good stuff. More people should know Raincoats. They're good for you. Number 20 is Fear of Music by the Talking Heads. Now, this is probably, I think it's safe to say, could be their darkest record, right? I mean, it's darker than Buildings and Food and Debut. It's not as weird as um, the next couple of albums that came after. But these songs are really cool, and I think it's the first one. Yeah, it is. It is the first one they did with Brian Eno. So they're playing with new sounds. and delving the different kinds of sounds that they hadn't had, like funk and R&B and world beat that you didn't hear on the other, previous records. So it kind of gives you a hint of where they're headed after this, but very good record. Number 19 is Dirk Wears White Socks by Adam and the Ants. Now, kind of the Ants don't get mentioned very often in the post-punk sphere because they kind of get lumped in with either new romantic or new wave or whatever else, whatever kind of categories you want to try. But I think they should be mentioned. Um, this record is more in line with like the Banshees or Wire rather than um, Wow 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 or anything else that they were kind of out with this at the time in the early 80s. Now this is obviously 79. Um, but this is a very good album. If you're kind of dismiss them because you're not into you know, the new wavy type stuff that they did after this, but you do like, say, Wire or Bauhaus or something like that, give it a shot. This is a good record, and Marco Peroni's guitar work on this album is fantastic. Um, Number 18 is The Raven by the Stranglers, who are another band that are impossible to categorize. You can try, um, but they're just so all over the place. This album is dark and it's weird as shit, but it's a huge artistic step forward from the really aggressive first two or three albums, that the aggressive three albums that came before this one. They took their time, a little bit more songwriting involved in here, a lot more textures going on. Um, but it's very interesting and it's an infinitely cool record, as are most of the early Stranglers records with the original lineup. Good stuff. Number 17 is Days in Europa by the Skids. Um, so this is the second Skids record, second one that came out in 1979, actually. And on this one, they're adding a little bit more electronic, like Kraftwerk type elements to the sound, to their already anthemic sound. And I think that the results are outstanding. It's a great sounding record too. It doesn't sound like 1979. There's a nice thick guitar sound, thick drum sound. Um, but I think there are two different mixes. If you have the yellow album cover, that one's the better mix. That's the European mix. They remixed it with a black album cover for the US with the synths pushed out front. Gives it a little bit thinner of a sound. The songs are still great even that way, but to get the full effect, you want to hear the European mix. It's much better. Number 16 is Lodger by David Bowie. And we all know this is the third and final installment of the Berlin trilogy. Now, it's mostly regarded as the least of the three of the Berlin records. And it's true, it is, but I think that says more about the first two records than it does this one. That doesn't mean this is not a good record, it just means that the first two were just outstanding, groundbreaking, crazy good albums. Um, but Lodger's got its moments, and I think it kind of gets overshadowed by their two for many reasons, but definitely has its moments. All right, number 15 was going to be Manifesto by Roxy Music. Now, Roxy Music broke up after the Sirens record in 1975, which was their biggest selling record up to that point. Um, they come back 3 years later. Now, this album's a little bit more unbalanced. It's not as consistent as the first 5 or 6 Roxy albums, which were you know in my opinion, some of the greatest records ever recorded. But this has still got some really great stuff on it. The title track, um, Stronger Through the Years. There's some really good songs on this album. No, there are some other ones that you have to they're trying to jump in on like the new wave pop thing to kind of be relevant. It kind of sounds like, but even those aren't terrible. But this is a it's definitely worth checking out if you're into Roxy music. Number 14 is Scared to Dance by the Skids again. That's right. We got two Skids records in 1979. Um, so I mean, this band doesn't get talked about a lot again. Like I keep saying that about some of these bands, but they have attitude, they have hooks, still sounds fresh, doesn't sound outdated. Richard Jobson is an awesome front man, um, and you have some really tasty guitar work by the late great Stuart Adamson, who went on to uh, bigger fame with Big Country. Um, but this is where he got to start, and you want to hear some really great guitar playing, you got to check out these early Skids records. Number 13 is London Calling by The Clash. So, what hasn't already been said about London Calling? It's been, like the white album of the punk world. So, um, it's been analyzed to death, but it's an amazing record. It's groundbreaking. Um, I still love it after all these years. I still listen to it. Um, and you kind of know it's a crazy stacked year when you have London Calling as your number 13 album of the year. I mean, I'm doing this and I'm going, am I really putting this down at number 13? I'm looking at the ones higher and I like them more, so I had to do it. Number 12 is Machine Gun Etiquette by The Damned. I know that's going to be some people out there kind of scratching their heads as to why I'd have Machine Gun Etiquette above London Calling, but it comes at you hard and fast in the beginning, and it's punishing in spots, but it's also very beautifully melodic in others, um, like Melody Lee, and but then you have Love Song and the title track that are just like come out, you feel like you're getting pummeled. Um, but I personally think it's one of the greatest punk albums ever recorded. Number 11 is going to be the self-titled debut by the Pretenders. Now, I personally am a pretty big Pretenders fan, and I think Chrissy's done a lot of really great albums. But the original lineup was a was a total beast. Um, and don't, I'm not sure. I'd have to go and listen to all of them again, but I just think that like the original lineup, it's just heartbreaking that they didn't get to do any more records together. But um, it's just a solid album straight through. Mystery Achievement, um, Up Neck, Brass and Pocket. And there's just, I mean, all the way through the album. Great album. Number 10 is Door Door by Boys Next Door, also known as Birthday Party. They would change their name to Birthday Party after this record. Um, so I know it's not as terrifying or weird as the Birthday Party records, but these songs are really, really good. I mean, they're more of like there's more sing along type stuff you can going on here, and I can see why they didn't feel the need to go any further with this format. But man, it's just a fun album, and Shiver is awesome, and Nick and Roland are they really shine on this record. And Nick is more of a singer, kind of crooning on here, which is kind of funny. Um, as he turns into a madman after this album. Um, but I love Door Door. I think it's a great album. Number 9, I have Armed Forces by Elvis Costello and the Attractions. Now, this is Elvis's third album, and he's kind of putting on a masterclass in power pop songwriting on here. There's no filler. Um, I think the entire album might be a half an hour long. I'd have to check, but it feels like it gets in and gets right out. Um, and the crazy thing is as good as this is, you're listening to it and going, my God, the songwriting on this for such a young guy is so good. But he hasn't even reached his peak yet. That comes in the next couple of years. Number 8 was I have the Mighty Gang of Four with Entertainment. Saying Gang of Four's first album is groundbreaking is a little bit of an understatement, I think. Um, I can't remember before this any other band that could have put groove and angst together like that and make it work. I mean, I guess you could say the Stooges, but it wasn't this tight. The Stooges were um, sloppy, and they were supposed to be. That was the whole point. But their first 3 records with the original lineup, Gang of Four, if you don't know them and you can hear the influence of Gang of Four in just about anything that came out post 1991. I mean, you really can. Andy Gill's guitar playing is, I mean, it's sharp and it's edgy and it's very, very unique. It's I don't think anyone who's really kind of copied it because it's not really able to be imitated. It's a feel. It's not really a sound where you can dial up your pedals and get a particular kind of guitar, a particular kind of amp. It's in the picking hand. It's just his picking hand is so weird and different than everybody else. And Hugo's drumming and just the rhythm section in general of this album is phenomenal. Um, Gang of Four, you should know them. You have to know them. Number 7 is going to be Cut by the Slits. I I love the Slits, especially this album. And I think the more time goes by, now you're talking about an album now that's 45 years old, and it keeps getting better as the years go by. It doesn't get more dated or more. It's just it gets fresher as the years go by, and it sounds and it's you realize how influential it was, and it's addictive. I kind of like go out of my way sometimes and I refrain from listening to it because I know when I listen to it, I'm going to listen to it like a week. Bib's guitar playing is so cool. Um, Ari was an amazing front person for a band. And Budgie's insane on this album. It's Buzzy before Budgie was in the Banshees. He played on this first Slits album, and just him coming into the band just totally tightened things up. Not that Palmolive was insane on the drums. Um, as a matter of fact, she's the drummer for the Raincoats, who we talked about earlier. Number 6 is going to be 154 by Wire. So Wire, you get, I think Wire Pink Flag is the album that they're most identified with. And I like Pink Flag a lot. Um, but I think the next 2 records to me are what truly kind of define who Wire are for me. And it's not dismissing the rest of their catalog. And they've done a lot more daring stuff, and they've never gotten boring or complacent. But to start to find out where Wire is, I would suggest chairs missing, and 154. 154 is a bit um, more angular. I would say is that I know I've used that word, but it's total disregard for time signatures, traditional time signatures. It's hilarious, but it's so cool and inventive. I mean, I don't know how many other bands could play that way and make it musical. I mean, I know to some people it's like, yeah, I'm not sure if Wire's a band that you truly get the first time you hear them. Um, God knows it took me a couple listens, but it gets there. And when it gets there, it's got you. Um, but yeah, the guitar interplay on this album is another thing that was really truly influential that you could hear years later, especially in like things like Interpol and things like that. You can definitely hear, you know, those guitar interplay where it seems the guitars are weaving in and out of each other. Cool stuff. Number 5 is Secondhand Daylight by Magazine. Now, parts of this record to me sounds like they were recorded in like a dense fog, um, and it just sounds very unique. And the musicianship in this band. Um, Now, Howard Devoto formed this band. He was the original lead singer for the Buzzcocks. He left because he was kind of like done with the punk thing before it even started. Formed Magazine. He recruited John McGeoch, who I think is, as far as guitar goes, I mean, and Barry Adamson, who's an amazing bass player, an amazing musician himself. And both of their performances on this album are fantastic. Um, they were this band was post-punk while punk was still happening. I mean, this is their second album. The first one was in '78, and that was fantastic also. Um, if you, it's crazy to me that this band is not more highly regarded. If you haven't heard them and you like all this kind of music that I'm talking about here, you definitely should check them out. John McGeoch guitar work on the song Permafrost is, and throughout the entire record is stellar. So is Barry, and so is Barry Adamson's bass playing. Number 4 is Join Hands by Susie and the Banshees. It is the second album. Many believe this kind of fell victim to the sophomore jinx. Um, I disagree to a certain point. I mean, I think it's just about as good as the Scream. I mean, it's the same lineup. Um, I just don't think they've reached their songwriting peak yet. I think they were just getting started as soon as this record was over. The lineup gets a massive upgrade after this because half the band leaves, and McGeoch and Budgie come in, and then it's off to the races for the Banshees for me. But yeah, but Join Hands, still a great record, and just where Susie starts getting her vocal chops, a little bit more rather than just this, the screeching from Scream. Number 3 is Metal Box by Public Image Limited. It is the second album by Pill. Um, you have Lydon, Wobble, Levine, and sometimes Atkins. Martin Atkins is kind of jumping in and out. I think he's on Metal Box, and I think he's on the next one, Flowers of Romance, and parts of the next one. But I think he left twice, came back. I don't know. But all I know is that lineup to me was the best Pill lineup. It's relentless. It's terrifying. It's thought provoking. Um, First time I heard it, I didn't know what to make of it. I think I heard it the first time when I was like 19. And I'm going, what is this? It didn't even make any sense. Is this even music? A couple more listens later, I was just so reeled in. And I've been a Pill fan ever since. Uh, Real quick, real funny story. Um, I used to work at a place where every Friday everyone would pick one song and they would play it over the PA while everyone was working. And they always were asking me, "Hey, I'll pick a song, pick a song." I'm like, "You guys are never gonna want any of my songs. You just don't want anything I listen to. Trust me." Like, "Oh, come on, come on." I'm like, "Okay." So I sing, so I requested Albatross. The looks on their faces. And Albatross is what, 11 minutes long? Hilarious. Anyway, Magic Metal Box number 3. So we're up to the top two. And number 2, I have Quiet Life by Japan. And many, many, many other years, this would be the number 1 album, but it can't be this year. So, um, this band, I mean, in the next couple of years coming up in 80 and 81, you're going to hear me go on about Japan a little bit because I just think they were so incredibly ahead of their time. I think the musicianship is excellent. I think the songwriting is excellent. Um, they don't get their due. I think many of the bands in the 80s copied them, and they had broken up before the 80s sound even kind of really got going. I think David Sylvian is a genius. I think Mick Karn is one of the best bass players in the world. Um, Rest in peace. But I think this is, especially on this side of the Atlantic, I think it's an unknown masterpiece. And if you don't know Japan, you should really get to know them. You won't regret it. Um, Especially from this record going forward. The first couple records before this are also very good, but it's a totally different feel. It's more like a punk glam thing, much closer to like New York Dolls rather than this is kind of this where they got their footing and they became themselves and had their own identity. It's a great album and it's short. It's about 35 minutes long. And everything on it is awesome, beginning to end. Which brings us to the number 1 record of 1979, and it is Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division. Um, so, over 45 years after the original release of Unknown Pleasures, the record still sounds modern, sounds fresh, it's still constantly imitated and copied and highly regarded. Um, and sometimes I just ever listen to it and go, why do I love this so much? Um, I mean, it doesn't make me feel good. um, doesn't really make me feel better. Um, but it does make you feel. And up to this point, there absolutely was nothing that sounded like this. Um, and I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of people have tried, but you just can't get that exact sound that these 4 men and this producer created. Um, it's astounding to me that the lyrics to this record were written basically by a 21-year-old kid. Um, it's scary, you know. It's sad when you find it goes forward and the story goes forward. But um, in my estimation, this is one of the greatest albums ever recorded. Um, I think Peter Hook redefined the role of the bass guitar in rock music. Um, I don't think that's really debatable, is it? I mean, think about what the bass guitar was before Joy Division and what it was after. It's just especially in indie rock and alternative rock or whatever you want to call it. Um, that was basically the sound of the bass guitar. Um, and Martin Hannon is just mad, mad genius. The sound, and we'll talk about next year, but on this album, what he did to these songs has made them immortal, really. Because without this production, I'm not sure it would have had the impact that it has now. Am I wrong? I mean, anyway, I just think that this album is, I don't want to put a number on it. We'll get to that someday, but it's one of the greatest records ever recorded. And I'm still in awe of it after all these years. I mean, and like it's been, I'm years old, and I've been listening to it for 30 years, and I think, and I've grown to love it more as time goes on. So there you have it. Number one album, 1979 for me is Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division. Um, Thanks for checking us out. We're gonna have top 25 albums at 80, 81 going forward. Hopefully, I'll get some friends come in and we'll compare our lists and have like a conversation. Be a lot of fun. Um, we have some album rankings coming up. I'm going to do the modern English album ranking because they just released their new album, One, Two, Three, Four. That'll be included. So there'll be a review of the album within the ranking. And we have a lot of other fun stuff coming up this month. We're going to try. I'm not going to give it away because I don't want to copy it. So anyway, like, subscribe, um, all that other stuff. Leave your comments. You disagree, you agree. I'd love to hear. I'd love to have the dialogue back and forth with you guys. And check out our social media. The links will be underneath. And catch you next time. Dead End Street. See ya.